Right, hello guys, Lucian here, and we have some more Hell Let Loose footage. This is literally just came out. It is 4 AM. I was planning to go to bed, but apparently I'm not now because we're watching this. So let's have a look at what we've got. So the guys are moving towards a new objective, and this is quite a clever video that they've showcased. If you want to hear the communications, then you can go check this out on their own YouTube. And the guys were good enough to sort of like ping me that this was up and coming, so that's why I'm making this video right now. So yeah, this shows some gameplay of the guys battling for an objective. They're basically at, I guess, the orchard right here you can see, or they're near to this place, the orchard. They're going to head towards Brecourt Manor, which is another location on the map. The way that Hell Let Loose is going to work is you're going to have a map. That map's going to be divided into grid squares. Each grid square is going to represent a location like the orchard or Brecourt Manor. So it's like each base is essentially a capture point. Some of those points may have resources available to you or team, and that's going to benefit you, whether it's kind of like ammo, fuel, whatever. In a very, or manpower, for example. Similar to, as I've said before, Company of Heroes, it's something along those lines. That's the best way to sort of think about it. So what we see the guys do is spend quite a decent amount of time battling over this one point. And that kind of, I guess this gameplay really gives you a sense of the pace of the game. And that's pretty important because the pace of a game really strongly dictates how certain engagements will play out, how the overall game will feel to you, and what kind of action you will get. It's interesting enough, isn't it, that this week I've been looking a lot more at Battlefield yet again, and I've got some more news and information sort of coming up about some things related to that. But one of the key things that I always think changed with Battlefield over the past few years was pace of the game. The pace of the game changed gigantically. Remember in Battlefield Hardline they were talking about, you know, being the fastest Battlefield ever. Now I actually personally think one of the best things about previous, well, with Battlefield, we're looking at Hell Let Loose here, but you know, the best things about it was the slower pace. And that's what I see here in Hell Let Loose, is whilst it is intense and very unforgiving, the pace is much more akin to something like older Battlefield titles. Battlefield titles were always very exciting and really full on, but the pace is something which has been lost, and it is difficult to overstate how important that is in terms of the effect on the gameplay, because I also love that little moment there. You see when that guy, and he kind of looks back and it's sort of like a real interesting flip turn on the shoulder. But yeah, the pace of the game can, you know, it can specify a lot for you. It can specify the mood, the tension, the immersion that you have in a game. And again, as I say, I feel that was something that was lost with some games. Now, it's totally subjective, but for me, when games can be very, very, very fast and unrelenting and it's just non-stop action, that can be exciting for sure. But it can be exciting usually in bursts, because when you have those bursts of action, that's what's exciting. It's the action that peppers the rest of the time where you don't have the action. But if it's just unrelenting action, it can actually become tedious, mundane, and just repetitive. But when you have these, you can see the guys right here sort of working through the lines, taking, you know, checking each position off point by point, moving through. You know, it doesn't feel that too disconnected to me from something like Armor, when the guys are actually in a city and they're checking off buildings as they go, and they're clearing through buildings and securing sites. But look, you know, I won't, you know, we're comparing games here, we're looking at this new game, but, you know, if you actually do even look at, you know, Battlefield 1, I have to say, you know, sometimes in BF1, you'll be like, you know, capturing a flag in, say, Conquest, a capture point. You'll be clearing through buildings on that site, and that's probably actually the most exciting point for me in BF1, is like clearing building sections, going through, and the tension of trying to like take control of that point. Now this is what this game is all about. Hell Let Loose is all about controlling those points, and then you have to cover the space in between to get to those points. You see a lot of this where the guys are kind of moving up to get to a point, and that's where you're going to get those kind of scattered skirmishing engagements. So I think there's a lot of gameplay to be shown here in what is essentially quite a simple, straightforward video. It just shows the guys coming up to Brecourt Manor and dealing with what they have to take control of it. And in many ways, you could argue that the gameplay is fairly straightforward here. You know, they're covering their points, they're moving in, clearing through buildings, communicating about where they hear and see enemy, taking out enemy along the way. It's quite straightforward, it's quite matter of fact, but it gives you a really good impression of where this game is headed, where this game is going to. And again, I've said this before about this game, I really appreciate the guys showing this kind of raw, albeit I will say studio-led style gameplay. Now look, this is an important thing to remember as well. Just because the guys are showing this style of gameplay, that does not translate into necessarily meaning that players are going to play in this way. And this is obviously a big problem nowadays. This is another topic that I've been talking about a lot this week, is that, you know, you can show this stuff, but are players going to play this way? Should they play this way? I mean, this is something which I've asked the devs straight out in previous interviews that I've done with them, and I'll probably link those videos at the end of this one, so if you want to check those out, if you haven't seen them already, they'll be at the end of this video for you to have a look at. And there's one where I did a very long interview, tons of information in that one. But the devs have been pretty clear that, you know, this is how they want the game to play. You know, they're not pulling any punches and saying, well, you know, you get different players and they can do whatever. No. They've said straight up, this is how the game should be played, this is how we want it to be played. So at least the developers are on the same page and they can see the importance of, you know, focusing on the core gameplay aspects and you know, ensuring that team play and objective play is going to work. One thing that's true with this game, you can see straight here, the UI is incredibly minimal. The UI is very, very minimal. That means there isn't a lot of information for you other than what you see and what you hear from other players. And I actually talked a little bit about this, I think, when we were looking at some of the gameplay previous to this, which is that, you know, when you see these guys just running along past a hedgerow, okay, lone wolfing all over the place. Lone wolfing in this game, you know, you might get lucky and you might get some kills, or if you find a good camping spot, you might pick off a load of targets here and there, but you're going to be way more successful as a group because you can cover each other's back. If you do have an enemy that's, you know, bunkered in somewhere and a problem, you can direct each other to that guy and take him out before he has an opportunity to do way more damage to your team. So working together as a fire team or a squad is going to be a lot more, you know, beneficial to you than just running around lone wolfing all of the time. And I think, you know, from this gameplay, again, you can hear the guys' communications, it showcases that. Let's talk a little bit about the environments, the graphics, the feel, the look and the feel, the vibe of it, and it's looking really nice. The graphics are fantastic, especially at distance. I think this game is one which paints itself really well at distance. When you're sort of looking down those roads, those avenues, even when you're looking through the kind of grass and the flowers and so on in the ground, and the texture details on the buildings, at distance looks fantastic. Close range looks very good as well. You can see right here some of these sort of wood detail, the plaster on the walls. You know, the detail is nice. These stones on the wall here as well, they're pretty nice too. I mean, considering this is pre-alpha, like proper pre-alpha, I think it's looking very, very good. There's obviously some stuff that could be tweaked a little bit. I wonder how much, whether the lighting is going to stay exactly like this or whether they're going to bring it a little bit darker, a little bit more shadows, I don't know. But overall, I think the graphics wise, it's looking very, very nice. The only thing that I would say that I am not too sure about right now, it feels quite lightweight. Like when the guys are moving around, they feel very floaty, and again, it's pre-alpha, so I will do my best to inquire and actually find out, like, hey, is this kind of where you want to be at, or is it going to feel more weighty? I think all of the units that I've seen move around in this, they feel very floaty like this. Like the guy seems to be sort of like, you can feel he's kind of like guiding over the ground. There doesn't feel any weight. I remember on a previous video where I was talking about, like, you know, I was asking you guys questions like, you know, sort of what would you like to see here. There was a great comment from someone who said it'd be fantastic if in the game you could sort of have penalties for going across different kinds of terrain. You know, so if you're going through like dry ground like this, then, you know, yeah, you're just moving at normal speed. If you're going across muddy, like thick carved out mud in the ground, sort of ishly similar to here, look like right there, then maybe that slows you down a little bit. If you're going through heavy grass like this, it's hard to just run through heavy grass. You know, if it's lightweight, then no problem at all. But if you try to run through a field of heavy grass, it slows you down a little bit, and that would be another thing which would be good to see. So yeah, I don't know if that's possible. It'd be a cool thing. It'd be a good way of sort of combining the terrain train together, and it'd make you make interesting decisions in game when you were trying to move between different areas depending on how much it slowed you down. In the same way that sort of pushing through a hedge, I would quite like it if pushing through a hedge you didn't just kind of step through and you're on the other side. If you kind of had to almost sort of muscle your way through the hedge a little bit. Again, no idea if that's possible. It would be a cool thing. The weapons and the weapon handling, I mean, so far they look good. They move well, the sort of animations and general characteristics of the weapons seem about right. I'm no weapons expert, but you know, I think most people at this point, if you play a lot of games, have seen plenty of World War II weapons, and these seem pretty on point. The one thing that was a big little issue for me was the sound. I don't know if this is the finished sound. I don't know if the sound was set differently so that you could hear the comms in terms of it turned down a little. For me personally, I always love my sounds to be deafening and terrifying. It should be every bullet crack, every shot fired should make you sit up in your chair. You know, especially in a game like this where, as I spoke about first, the pace of the game is so critical. That slower pace, so therefore the engagements that you do have should be intense. And you know, they just, I think some of those guns, they especially on the more fully automatic weapons, they feel very like rat-a-tat-tat-tat. You know, it's just like it doesn't feel like it has a lot of impact. I think it could do with a bit more ring to the audio, you know, a little bit more punch, and I'm not quite sure whether, again, that's just something that was done with this video. We're still in pre-alpha, so again, this is something that I will put to the devs, and I will try to pin that down, find that out, or maybe they'll just reply for us in the comments down below. That would be nice, wouldn't it? As I've said before, guys, I'm pretty interested to know what you think at this stage, so if you want to tell me down below, I'd be very interested to know what your opinions are about this. What do you think of the gameplay in terms of the gunplay, the interaction, the team play, the squad play, the pace, just how the units are moving through the landscape, how the guys are sort of communicating and working around the sites here to clear through them. This game, it definitely feels more authentic for me. You know, we've sort of spoken about that before, but this kind of on the ground, the pace, the slower pace of it, it all sits right. It all sits right with me. It feels correct. You know, we don't have people doing trick shot sniping all over the place. You know, it's a World War II game. You know, the guys are actually focused on capturing points and securing through. I'll tell you one other thing that I just noticed there that doesn't sit too well with me though. The sort of kill screen animation. I hope that becomes something a little bit more stylish. I'm pretty certain that it will. I'm pretty sure that that's just like you know, placeholder because it's very pre-alpha. But you know, seeing as we are looking at gameplay and thinking about it, that's one thing which I would like to see change very much. I don't think anybody wants to see a kill cam, for God's sake. I don't think that at all. But I think that it would be good if you sort of, you know, as you die, maybe your character sort of lollops down to the ground and the screen kind of goes like a grey or dark. So you might get, you know, sometimes the impression of where the shot came from, you know, sort of as you're falling to the floor, like maybe you catch a guy running past, or you see a guy moving through a hedgerow out the corner, you know, as you're falling down. Something along those lines I could sit with, but the straight black screen feels a little stark. It feels like a little bit of a, I don't know, like a full stop. You know, it's just a bang, you know, like somebody shut the door in your face, and I don't know, it doesn't quite feel right. It kind of disconnects you from the environment, but as I say, I feel pretty sure that they will change that up, because as I say, it feels way too stark. It feels too much of a disconnect from what it is that you're actually doing, especially when you're so immersed in the game to just outright just take you out of it. It's just too harsh. But while this gameplay shows, I think, where the dev team are leading us towards, remember what I said before about like the graphics looking down these avenues? Look at that. It's almost like a painting, like as you look down through. It looks absolutely fantastic. Those kind of, those range shots. Every image that I see here feels like a composition. Like when you look at the guy hiding under the cart, that feels like a picture. When you see a guy kind of sitting behind the barrels and you look through, it feels like a picture. Like everything, it's very immersive. I can very much imagine it's difficult when you're just watching this, sitting and watching it on a YouTube, to really feel the environment, but I can kind of picture it if you were sitting playing and you had your headphones on and you're focused completely on what you're doing. I can imagine this game getting very immersive very quickly, especially if some of those background sounds are brought up a little bit. I would love to hear this game just with almost no commentary, but the sound levels brought right up. But there's a lot to see here. There's a lot of promise in this game, and I'm still very, very interested in this. I think there's some room to go in tweaking and finessing. I would like to very much see a situation where we have more guys on the ground and there's actual sort of battle, like lines pushing forward. Any of if you guys have seen some of my armor stuff, know what that's like when the guys are like pushing forward and there's a lot of gunfire coming in. Great to see that, but yeah, it's all going in the right direction. So guys, the Kickstarter and their webpage has got some more information. If you want to find out about that, check out the other videos that I've made for this so far too. The Kickstarter has still got some more stretch goals. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.